Well, welcome to the 700 Club. More horrific details emerging from the Texas school massacre. The gunman stormed a classroom, locked the door behind him, and conducted a shooting spree for 40 minutes that killed 19 children and 2 teachers.
The shooter posted his plan on Facebook shortly before the rampage. George Thomas has more on the attack and the innocent victims slain in that classroom.
We need thee every hour, most gracious Lord.
Shock, horror, disbelief. Residents of Uvalde, Texas, joining a prayer vigil Wednesday evening to remember victims of this horrific massacre.
My heart was broken today. We're a small community, and we'll need your prayers to get us through this.
Authorities say the suspect, Salvador Ramos, legally purchased 2 AR-15-style rifles days after his 18th birthday. Both weapons used to mercilessly gun down 19 kids and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School.
It's honestly just so sick and disgusting to have the intent to kill, to go to a little kid's school and wish them harm. I mean, they're babies.
The carnage beginning when he shot his grandmother and stole her truck. The grandmother called the police. Ramos posted 3 private messages on Facebook detailing his plan of attack.
The second post was, I shot my grandmother. The third post, maybe less than 15 minutes before arriving at the school, was, I'm going to shoot an elementary school.
Police say Ramos charged into one of the classrooms, locked the door behind him, and started killing.
We just hear all kinds of gunshots going off, like nonstop.
All 21 victims murdered inside that classroom. The horror lasting 40 minutes before Ramos was killed by police. Wearing a T-shirt that says, "Because he lives, I can face tomorrow." Syria Arizmendi is trying to stay strong for her family. Syria is the aunt of 10-year-old victim, Ellie Garcia.
She was very happy and very outgoing. Loved to dance and sing and play sports.
Among those also killed, Alexandria Lexi Rubio, the 10-year-old daughter of a deputy with the Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, who responded to the shooting. On Tuesday, Lexi's parents were there for her honor roll ceremony. 30 minutes after snapping this picture, the gunman opened fire. 4th grade special education teacher Eva Mireles was in that room with Lexi. Audrey Garcia's daughter was a former student.
Miss Mireles, that kind of teaching, that hands-on, doing whatever she could do to help Gabby, I mean, that's the kind of thing she did every day.
Churches in and around Uvalde have opened their doors to the grieving community.
I want you to know that we love you.
Nathan Lorick of the Southern Baptist Convention of Texas telling CBN's Faith Nation they're sending ministers to Uvalde.
We have deployed some staff members and chaplains. We have a disaster relief feeding unit on the ground.
Billy Graham Rapid Response Team chaplains have also deployed to Uvalde to offer comfort and counsel to the families and other residents. George Thomas, CBN News.
Here's a verse that came to me this morning. O Lord, the God of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, make your people always want to obey you. See to it that their love for you never changes. Let us pray that over America today, that the people of America will always want to obey, will always want to love one another and love God with all of our heart. This tragedy just underscores the need, absolute need, to continue to pray for our schools, our churches, our houses of worship, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states. We need to pray for America like never before, so that that which restrains continues to restrain. That is just pure evil, what happened in Texas. We need to have divine protection over our country once again. Well, 2 mass shootings in 10 days have lawmakers on Capitol Hill calling for action. Ephraim Graham has more from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, after the massacres in Uvalde, Texas and Buffalo, New York, members of Congress are pressing for stricter gun control laws. CBN News senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has more on the battle lines being drawn.
The shock of this tragedy is still fresh, but here in Washington, the gloves are already off, with politicians pressed on how they will address gun violence. On Capitol Hill, emotions are high. Democrat lawmakers immediately demanding action on gun control in the wake of a series of deadly mass shootings in the U.S. Senator Chris Murphy is from Sandy Hook, where 20 6- and 7-year-olds were massacred in 2012.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Just days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African-American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands.
Uvalde marks the deadliest school shooting since then, a sad reminder of the Sandy Hook tragedy and the call to action that followed.
And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this.
Since Sandy Hook, Congress has tried and failed to pass stricter gun laws, some Democrats taking to Twitter to blame Republicans for the tragedy. The House recently passed bills that would expand the waiting period for gun buyers and require background checks for sales at gun shows. But the Senate is expected to block them, Republicans insisting it's not the answer.
That doesn't work. It's not effective. It doesn't prevent crime. We know what does prevent crime, which is going after felons and fugitives and those with serious mental illness, arresting them, prosecuting them when they try to illegally buy firearms.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line.
In Texas, Democrat gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke interrupting a press conference by Governor Greg Abbott, accusing him of doing nothing to control gun crimes. With the issue of gun control now back in the spotlight ahead of midterm elections, some support so-called red flag laws aimed at identifying someone believed to be potentially dangerous. They would also open the door to confiscate weapons or block gun purchases. Critics argue it's infringement on constitutional rights and will lead to punishment of law-abiding people.
Red flag law, we know those things work, and we can prevent this from happening.
But Texas Governor Abbott says there was no known mental health history for the gunman. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Staying on Capitol Hill, Senate members heard testimony on the Iranian nuclear deal Wednesday. The U.S. Special Envoy for Iran expressing doubt there will be a return to the deal made by President Obama, which President Trump pulled out of. Robert Malley telling the Senate Foreign Relations Committee the prospectus for renewing the deal are, quote, tenuous at best. Malley also said Iran could be just weeks away from obtaining enough material to build a nuclear weapon. Middle East analysts who oppose the deal are encouraged by the Biden administration's recent move turning down a key demand by the Iranians. However, there is still concern the deal might go through. As Chris Mitchell reports, they fear it could lead to a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
President Biden finally decided to keep Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps on the Foreign Terrorist Organization list. Iran had asked the U.S. to remove the IRGC from the list, and it's been the sticking point holding up the nuclear agreement for weeks.
The IRGC has American blood on its hands, and there's no good reason for the United States to even consider lifting this FTO designation.
Middle East expert Eli Kohanim says there has been bipartisan support on Capitol Hill to keep that designation in place.
You're hearing from many, both Democrat and Republican members of Congress, who have voiced their concern to the Biden administration that there's no good reason to lift that FTO designation.
Even if that stipulation remains and the deal is signed, concern is growing that it will pave the way to nuclear proliferation in the Middle East.
The Saudis already have agreements with the Pakistanis. They funded the Pakistani nuclear project, and they are ready to procure nuclear weapons the moment this agreement is signed, and they understand that Iran is moving towards nuclear capabilities. So what we will see is proliferation of nuclear capabilities all over the Middle East.
Avivi also told CBN News the agreement would have global implications.
This is not talking about threat in the Middle East. This is a whole new globe. It's a whole new world. It's a threat for humanity. And therefore, I cannot understand why the European Union and this current US government is pushing towards enabling this vicious regime who calls America the big Satan and calls Israel the little Satan. Let them have nuclear capabilities.
As it stands, the nuclear agreement also promises sanctions relief that would release nearly $100 billion to the Iranian regime. Avivi and others believe the money would not only fund Iranian partners in the region, like Hezbollah and others, it could also reach allies closer to the U.S., like Venezuela, which Avivi calls Iran's Cuba. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Situation we shall continue to watch. Gordon?
And we need to continue to pray for it. I'm glad that the administration is finally waking up, that Iran's never going to be our friend. They do view us as the great Satan, Israel, the little Satan. We need to take them at their word. That video should just leave you with chills. Here they are celebrating intercontinental ballistic missiles, and those missiles are already in place in Iran. They're parading them through the streets. Now, you can say, well, that's short range and it'll only go to Europe. At some point in time, they're going to get one that can come here. Why in the world would we ever let them get a nuclear bomb that they can put on one of those missiles? We should take them at their word. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy Israel. Let us not let them have the weapons to do that.